Okay, so that's what my blog is on, because I had a ticket for myself in Trello saying how Ortelius fits into domain-driven design. Okay, so now this is going to be actually switched to how Ortelius fits into Cloudbuild, right?
If you want, whatever you, whichever is going to be easier for you.
I think Cloudbuild will be easier, especially since I just did it in my Google stuff for Sierra.
Oh, perfect.
Google Cloudbuild. Yeah, I just did the SRE certification on Coursera.
Perfect. So
yeah. My understanding. So Cloudbuild is the container where you build your containers, basically, instead of obviously it's like doing it locally, except doing it in the cloud. That's my understanding.
Right.
And then you can pushes it into a registry, which is, well, it stores the container image in a bucket.
Yep. So let me get us started here. So we're going to work with, with Ortelius, all of our repos that deliver a container are hooked up with Cloudbuild. We also do some GitHub actions on the back end for security scanning of the containers. But we'll put that aside for now and just look at the repos themselves that are focusing on Cloudbuild. So just a quick breakdown. So we're looking at the website repo, and this is the Hugo server that we go and build a static version of our markdown that is contained in like the content directory here. So some of the important directories around the Google Cloudbuild piece that we have the Cloudbuild directory, obviously, and that has the YAML file. We'll dive into that here in a second. And then we have to do the deployment, we use a Helm chart. So we have the chart values and our templates down here, and our deployment and our service to our Kubernetes cluster. So what's going to happen is the website gets deployed out to our Azure cluster as part of our process. And then finally, we have our Docker file.
Sorry, can I just stop you there? So is it get built in Google but pushed to Azure?
Yep.
Okay.
And it gets a little more, our process, so the Azure pipelines are a little more difficult to set up. And so I just use the Google Cloudbuild. There's a really simple way to set up your process. Another one we could have used would have been like the GitHub actions are going to be something similar. GitLab is going to be similar. The concept's the same, but for simplicity's sake, I just use Google Cloudbuild because it seems to be the most flexible and the easiest to configure out of all the CI tools. We could have brought in something like Captain, which is more event-driven, Tecton, but for those you need to stand up a whole CI product inside of your Kubernetes cluster, and that seemed like overkill for what we're doing. So the goal that I set for our build process for Ortelius was to check in. Once we check in, we want to go ahead and create the Docker image. So we're going to do a build, basically a Docker build with a tag, and then we'll take that image that's been built and push it to our Quay registry, Docker registry. The reason why I use Quay is because it's more stable and it doesn't have the restrictions than Docker Hub. Docker Hub, we used to get into problems with timeouts and security things, rate limiting, and Quay is much more stable and reliable, easier to interact with. There's no degradation in the process. And then after we get the image pushed to Quay, then we want to grab the image digest and some other information, and we're going to record all that metadata back with basically Ortelius's team that's running on the SaaS version that Deploy Hub hosts. So after we do the registration of the new image with Deploy Hub, we then go ahead and tell Deploy Hub, go ahead and deploy this out to Azure for us. So that's like the high level that we have going on. And let me bring up the Docker file.
Okay, so it sounds like something like a diagram would be quite cool to have as well.
Yeah, kind of like a flow diagram, because we have a lot of moving pieces between the different vendors.
Yeah, got a lot cheapers. Okay, so let me just try and regurgitate back to you. So it starts off obviously with your YAML file, which is your Cloudbuild YAML file. Using Cloudbuild, do you just go into the Cloud Shell? Do you just do it like that?
No, I'll show you.
You've got a pipeline.
Yeah, there's. Let me show you the Docker file first, and then we'll go from the Docker file back over to Cloudbuild and how it's hooked together. Yeah, so the Docker file for this is a multi-stage Docker file. I've been moving all of the builds to a multi-stage Docker file.
I'll ask a question around that. So that's going to be your fattest layer, right? Your first build, because that's kind of, in a sense, your application, right? That your, what is that? Node. Is it Node.js, right?
Yeah. So this is Node. This is a Node.js running on an Alpine.
Yeah. That's cool.
We tag it as build. So that's the build layer. And we set up
a build layer, then an application layer. Application layer is going to be nice because it's only going to be where the application will be devved on, so it'll be small changes and the other layer won't change ever. Is that right? Is that my understanding? Okay.
Exactly. Cool. So like you said, the build layer is going to be where all the fat is, all the all the npm packages, everything,
dependencies and all that.
Yeah, the compilers, all that stuff is going to be at down on the build layer. And so in this process, we set our working directory to build. We set a Hugo environment just so we turn on what they call production mode, which allows us to do like follow links. And then this is running in the context of our Git repo. So this is going to be in the context of the root of our Git repo. And what we need to do is we need to copy basically the whole website from the Git repo into the container. Into this build layer. So that's what that's doing, is copying the whole website in there. And then we do our npm install, we install Hugo, and then we'd run Hugo itself, which is this last line. And that actually takes the markdown and converts it into a static site. And what ends up happening, the static site ends up in this public directory underneath build. So when we're at the build in this build layer, all the output is going to be underneath build, and the directory that we're interested in is just the public directory. That's where all the translated static content's been kind of moved to for Hugo. So that takes care of our build layer, and then we get into our runtime layer, like you said, the application layer. And we're pulling this, this is actually coming from Docker Hub, not my favorite. We could actually go and rebuild this on our own and push it to Quay. I just haven't had a chance to do it. So far, we haven't had too many problems, but we wanted to pick up a Alpine version of Nginx that has the page speed module installed in it. So this guy has gone and created this image for us with all that already configured, which is great. Alpine's a nice little tight, it doesn't have too many CVEs in it. It's small and secure.
Yeah, a small layer of a very small, what do you call it, a zone for attack, in terms of, exactly.
Yeah, it has a small penetration point.
Yes, there's not much you can do to sort of, exactly. It's got some burglar bars on.
Yeah, so that's going to give us, and we're going to be hosting the static website through Nginx. and with the page speed module. We could have gone Apache. Apache is a little bit bigger. Nginx is easy to configure.
I love Nginx.
Yeah,
Great
it's
Nginx.
simple to work with.
Yeah.
So that's going to be that layer. And what we do is this next part, the copy from, is saying I want to copy files from the previous layers, the previous build steps. And so I'm copying the public directory that was generated by the Hugo into the HTML directory of Nginx. So this is the default directory for static content for this Nginx install. So we recursively copy the website that was generated by Hugo into the Nginx directory. And then we copy a couple other things that we need.
Your page speed config and your Nginx config, of course.
Yeah. So this one could actually be technically, you could technically change this to copy from.
You could actually, couldn't you just make that one copy job because it's all in the same directory?
It's coming from, I want specific files.
I see. It's a specific file, of course. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm copying it from the build layer. I could copy it from the Git repo, but I'm just by chance, I'm just copying from the build layer because the build layer already copied it into itself. So it's like it works. So we're copying over a couple configuration files, putting them in the right places. And then this guy has a weird bug in it that we need to, and based on our page speed configuration, we need to go do some final cleanup on permissions.
You said, who was page speed? Is this from Google, right? Do they not? I know they've got a container registry on GitHub.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've got one. I've got it here. I've got it here. Let me just share it with you quickly.
Yeah.
Just to see what you think. Sorry, let me just look for it. I saved it today. I found it today because I was reading an article. I don't know if it was in my studies or they've got their own amazing GitHub page, man, with all this awesome pre-built images and stuff, multi-stage images with this kind of stuff in. And I saw a page speed container already, like.
Perfect.
Where did I? I wish I would just put things in a place I could easily find.
And
yeah, sorry, you can carry on there. Sorry, I'll find it now.
Yeah, find it and drop it in. Drop it in Discord.
Yeah, I'll drop it in Discord for you.
Where is it? Okay. So one of the things, even though this is running on Google Cloud, we're going to push it to Quay because if we were to push it to GCR, we'd have to go in and set up a bunch of permissions and stuff like that inside of our Google account to expose that to be public for everybody. And it's just an extra step that's just a headache. Whereas Quay, you can just mark it as public and it's good to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of cloud. You can, like, whatever works best for you, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump over to our Google account.
I learned a ton now of how you set this up. I've got an image in my head now.
So we'll look at the past run, so you have a kind of a context of what's happened, and then we'll go into the YAML file to kind of take a look at what was the commands that actually made it happen. Come on. So I'm going to go into one of our previous website builds.
This is with
and you should be able to get to this, the output here. So you should, I gave access to everybody at Ortelius team to get to our Cloudbuild account.
Deploy hub SaaS. Yeah, I'm in there now. So in the, okay, cool. I'm going to go there quickly.
Yeah. So basically, like I said, we have a few steps. Because of the way we need to access our GitHub repo, we access our GitHub repo based on an SSH key instead of the HTTPS and trying to do a login. So one of the first things that we do is we grab, I've stored an SSH key in Google Cloud underneath their secrets. And I go ahead and basically copy that secret into the root home directory and set the permissions as part of that process. So that allows me to have full SSH access to any of my Git repos. It just avoids, you know, security, things like that. I have the SSH key is stored on I can't remember if it's organizational or on my personal level, but basically it's a high enough permissions to do whatever we need to do on the GitHub side.
Makes sense. Probably the organization there.
Yeah, it just simplifies the whole world instead of trying to do HTTPS with user ID passwords. Headache. I never use that. I always use keys. The next step
keys are good.
Yeah. Then the next step we do, and I'll dig into this when we get into the YAML file, is we need to set up some additional environment variables. We need to expose new environment variables and values to the whole build process. Then we go ahead and log into Quay, and the user ID password are also stored as secrets to the Google. And then finally, we do our build. This is kind of linked together. Basically, we do the build with a tag. We do a push, and then there's another special command that oh, here it is, where we go and grab the digest. There's this crazy shell scripting you got to do to figure out the digest. One of the weird things is you can't get a digest for an image until it's pushed to a container registry. It doesn't exist locally. It only exists when it's in a registry. So after the push, you can go grab the digest. And then finally, we tell deploy hub in Ortelius, here's this new version, go out and deploy it for me.
Wow.
So those are the steps, and the setup on the trigger side is going to be website. Here it is. See if I grab the right one.
Wow, this is amazing. This is like so cool because I've just learned a whole bunch of stuff, so it's going to be good for me.
Yeah. So the name, the description, whenever we push to a branch, we're going to go ahead and evoke the trigger. There's the repo that we're monitoring. So this is the link between our commit. You know, you do your push to the website repo, and once that happens, this trigger is going to get executed. Now we're only looking at the main branch.
Yes, makes sense.
Now we will be changing this down the road to look at any branch, and depending which branch it's coming from, if it's main, we will go ahead and push it to the production version of the Azure cluster, and if it's any other branch, we'll actually push it to a dev site. So we're going to be down the road using Istio to build once and do routing between a dev version and a production version to give us that preview look, but that's down the road.
Oh, I'd love to see that setup. I haven't had any experience with Istio.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be interesting to pull that in there.
Oh, that's right in. That's right up my alley. Eh? I love stuff like that. Cool.
I always set the configuration. I always mark this one. I don't trust the auto detect. Just because if somebody moves something around, I want to be sure that I'm not building something I don't want. So I always say, pick the YAML file. It's going to come from this
YAML, yeah, exactly.
This repo in this directory. And I've never had the need to use variables, but you can add in additional variables if you wanted to.
Yeah. Are you in the Ortelius trigger. Are you in that trigger?
Yep.
Ah, okay. Just want to make sure I was in the right trigger.
Yep. And you'll
Okay,
see, you'll see pretty much all the triggers are going to be very similar. If we look at the dock one, dock again is another Hugo server. Dock, we're pulling any branch, whether it's a maintenance branch or main, it doesn't matter for this one to push it out. But the same thing, looking at the repository specific directory.
Okay.
Now, the one thing that's kind of a drag on most of these CI tools is because I have everything, you know, like the website and pretty much all these, the triggers are almost identical, that I just can't make one trigger and give it a list of repos.
Yeah,
So,
that's a
so,
very
so
good
I have
point.
I have all these triggers and they're pretty much identical, except for the repo name. So there's really no way to, the way
I
these
see what
CI
you mean.
tools, it just becomes overwhelming. If you have 1,000
That's ridiculous.
microservices, yeah,
Oh my word, you'd have like 1,000 triggers because you
yep.
can't, like you say, if it's all the same, why can't you just make one for all your repos instead of this way around? I see.
Yeah.
Good point.
So that's one of the drawbacks with pretty much all the CI tools I've been around. They're kind of difficult. Let me see if there's anything under settings. Oh, I did have to turn on the decryptor and the secrets manager.
Okay. Did you have to put some? Do you have to put some encryption keys and things in there?
Yeah. So this is the KMS is to decrypt the Quay user ID and password. And the secrets manager is to get the SSH key.
Wait, let me just make a note of that. So, secret manager for the SSH key, and the other one was for Quay,
KMS was for the Quay user ID password.
Yeah, for the Quay registry to log in there.
Yeah, because that requires a login, and you know, it's like a basically a Docker login that we got to do. So
yeah,
they haven't really changed Docker to accept an SSH key yet, which would be nice.
Yeah.
And you'll see here at the very bottom. So I jumped over to the YAML file, and you'll see at the bottom, those are the KMS keys that are going to be decrypted through that, what we have going on there.
Okay. Yeah, that's obviously the way Google syntax likes it, right? So
yep. So this is the key ring with the
project.
Yeah, with where how the key's encrypted. Here is the encrypted base 64 of the user ID, and because Google's the only one that has the decryption key, I can expose this in my GitHub repo. Without the key, nobody can ever decrypt it.
Okay, so you can expose it with it safely. Doesn't matter if they find it; no one can do anything with it.
Exactly.
I learned something there. I didn't know you could do that actually.
Yeah, because the keys and the decryption key is stored in Google. Now, if somebody got into my Google account and got my key, they could decrypt it, but that's a pretty good hack to do that.
You're gonna have to, yeah, really, yeah, exactly.
So we'll kind of, if you're ready, we can start at the top and kind of walk through the different steps.
So let me try and you can just stop me where I'm going wrong.
Okay.
So basically, obviously, I would have cloned the repo down onto my machine, right? I'd make my changes, whatever they would need to be.
Yep.
Whether that be in the Cloud YAML file or the Docker file, I'd assume you never need to change the Helm file, right? Because that's a template. That's a template that you're using.
Yeah, right? Or if somebody went and changed, you know, content. You know, they added a new page. that would
Yeah.
count as a change as well.
Okay. Yeah, of course, that makes sense. I said, so the process kind of starts there. It starts there with you cloning down, you're pushing up your change. Right, let me just try and make a note. So you start with your change, you've cloned the repo. I'm just going to type this fast as speak. Clone the repo onto your machine. You've made the changes, made whatever changes you wanted to make, and you push them up. I guess you kind of create a merge request and
Yeah,
that
you do your
change, right?
you do your PR when the PR gets approved and merged.
Yeah, sorry, your pull request comes through, then it gets merged, and then Cloudbuild should kick off, right?
Yep, and because the way we have the branch we're monitoring for the trigger is main. When somebody does a push to any other branch, it'll get ignored. But when we do the PR merge from like another fork, that gets merged onto main, and that causes a new commit, and that's what will trigger it.
Exactly. So Cloudbuild is watching the GitHub repo, which then goes, hey, there's been a change. Poof, it kicks off the build, creates a new build, my understanding, and then it would go to it gets pushed to key, right? Is that right?
What was
Or
that?
does it get pushed to so once Cloudbuild is seen as change, it kicks off, creates a new build, right?
Yeah,
And
so it's going to start. It's going to start running the steps in the Cloudbuild YAML file.
Yeah, so it'll be exactly cloudbuild.yaml gets kicked off, and then that creates a new image of the for the container, right? Pushes it to the container registry. Is that going to get pushed to key now?
So what will happen is we'll just kind of walk through the individual steps. First, we're going to get the SSH key for us to talk to GitHub. And then we're going to set up environment variables. Now, one of the weird things with Cloudbuild, and it happens with a lot of these tools, there's no way to pass parameters or environment variables from like I can't set an environment variable like at the job level. What I have to do is a little trick where what this is doing is I've defined all my environment variables here. And these are environment variables that are local to this particular step. So this step, Cloudbuild SH, has all these environment variables that are I want to define. And one of the things like I'm doing here is getting the number of commits to the repo, so I can use that as like a build number. Because Cloudbuild gives you this weird build ID. It's like a hexadecimal ID that's kind of worthless.
Yeah.
So we go and count the number of commits to the repo. So we use that as the build number, and that's going to help us create our image tag. So one of the tricks I did was I took all of the, let's see here. So I'm going to go clean up. One of the things I need to do is one of the problems is in order for me to get the count of the commits in the repo, Google initially gives me what they call a I want to say it's like a short or a small. It's like the very just the branch. It gives you it doesn't give us any of the history. So it's like a quick clone that it does. And that quick clone is pretty much worthless because you can't get information out of it. It's literally just like copy the tip of all the files and give me no history. So what I have to do is, this is actually deleting all the files that Google Cloudbuild checked out for me already outside of this, the run of this job. Then I go and reclone the repo, and this is all happening in the concept of the workspace directory. So all of this whole Cloudbuild job, each step runs in a /workspace directory. So I clean up, get rid of the old Git repo, get the full one pulled down. I set up some tracking to figure out so I can get some history I need. And then the fun one is that is going to allow me to go ahead and look at these environment variables. And if I do the env command, the env command is going to print out all these environment variables plus the ones that have already been predefined to the job by Cloudbuild itself. And then what I do is I go ahead and prepend the word export in front of all those variables. And what ends up happening is I create a SH file that will have export component application equals blah, blah, blah. And
smart.
so this gives me a way to define any variables that I want in a SH file. And what ends up happening then is when we go on to the next step is one of the first things I do is I source that in. I do the period in front of the period space in front of it. And what that does is when I run that shell script, any environment variables that are contained in that shell script end up in the current shell. So what that does is allow the Docker login to have access to all those environment variables. So it's a little trick
That is amazing.
to pass things along. So it comes in really handy to manage things. So if we set any, remember back on this guy here, if we go into, just pick this one. If we added additional variables here, any of these key value pairs will end up in the environment. And because of that, they'll end up in the Cloudbuild SH file. So they'll get exposed, they'll trickle all the way down as part of the process. So one of the things we're going to do here is we're going to log into Quay, and we're going to set up, by default, the login wants to put it in your /root like Docker directory or something like that. And I told it to put it in a different directory. I want it in the workspace root, where my Docker config is going to be used, just as a convenience so I can keep track of, because what ends up happening between one step to the next step, things get lost, but workspace is persisted across the steps. So that's why I had to take the output of the Docker login for the Docker config, put it in the workspace. Then our next step, we're waiting for the login to finish. And then we go ahead and actually start doing our build, and we're referencing that as well. So we do our build with a tag, and then we do our push. So that's going to get it up to the registry because we've already done our login. And then we grab our environment variables, and we want to add the export digest, append it to the Cloudbuild as well. So this is going to go ahead and query the Docker registry and get us our digest number, and that's going to export that as the digest in our SH file. So this allows us to manipulate our environment variables that are getting passed along from step to step. And then we get into Ortelius and Deploy Hub, where we're going to tell the SaaS version, the Ortelius team, that we have a new component that we're updating and all the parameters that go with that. Word wrap that. So things like the component that's coming up from the top here that we've defined. You'll see all of them.
The end result is at Deploy Hub, and then it gets pushed to Azure from Deploy Hub.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've turned on here is I've given it a deployment environment. And when we give this Python script basically a parameter that says deploy to this environment, we're going to actually update, create a new version of the component, and then create a new version of the application with that's consuming that component. And then once all that's done, we're going to deploy it out to our environment. And that all happens in that one giant. And there's other things that we're doing. We're recording like the Git repo, the Git tag, the branch, the Docker tag, all that ends up.
Steve, this is a thing. That's amazing. How did you do all this stuff? Crazy.
I do it all the time. So if we look at,
yeah.
so if we log into Ortelius,
amazing, man.
And so if we look at our last deployment, and so that's the version. You can see the version numbers are being incremented. Ignore this. I have something set up wrong, but it's not affecting too much.
That's pretty cool. It's a cool pattern.
Yeah.
Cool
so
design.
Here we're actually doing the deployment. And because we have that Helm chart, Deploy Hub is using the Helm chart to go ahead and execute the deployment. It actually, we wrapper the Helm with Ansible, so that's how come you see some of this Ansible stuff. So basically, we've logged into our client. Deploy Hub is connected to, has information about how to connect to the cluster. That's been defined to Deploy Hub, not to Cloudbuild. And we basically get connected up to our cluster with the admin ID, and we can then start doing our Helm deployment.
This is the Deploy Hub part. I get that. This is where this is configuring the Deploy Hub. So Deploy Hub knows what to do with when it receives the end result of the Cloudbuild.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's like all the information that we have available, and that ends up pushing it out to our Azure cluster. And if we look at our components, look at our website here, we'll see this is the Cloudbuild URL. Like I said, there's that funky build number from Cloudbuild, totally worthless.
Yeah, what is that? Yeah,
it's just how they refer to it. There's the Helm chart that we're going to use. This is the Quay registry that we push to. There's the digest, the tag that was used, the git commit, where the repo is, and how we're referencing, which tag we're working off of, main or a feature branch.
So awesome.
So that's where we're able to go ahead and get that, all that information now is available in basically Ortelius.
So where do you guys run Deploy Hub? What cloud environment do you run that on?
The funny part is, so this SaaS version is actually being run in Google.
So it's going out of Google and
we're talking to Azure.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure that out in my head whilst I was thinking out loud now. Yeah.
Well, actually, because this is we're running the SaaS version of Deploy Hub. I actually have a reverse proxy that's running on one of our local machines here that allows me to do the deployments. So the reverse proxy, I'll show you what happens. So when we define an environment in here, we can set up key value pairs, and the deployment part of Deploy Hub in Ortelius understand how to log into a cloud provider. So this is like the SSH key to do the Azure login. That happens to be the cluster name over in Azure. There's the resource group, the tenant ID, the context that we want to use. So all this is allows me to go ahead and connect up to Azure. If we go back to this guy, this is our sample environment that we do all of our, it's at a different level. I don't have it's going to be at the endpoint. see if I can find it here. Yeah, I don't have it. Let me look at. I don't have it. I don't have the access with this user ID I'm in. But basically,
Why
we
are
can.
you?
Yep.
Sorry, why are you guys in Azure? Is it just, was there some sort of offering that you were given that you were
Yeah,
able to
we
use
were
it for
given
the?
25 grand worth of credits in Azure
Oh, okay,
for
okay. Well,
1 year.
that answers everything.
Yep. I need to set it up. So Deploy Hub got those credits, and I need to reapply for Ortelius as an open source to get the credits.
See, okay, that's smart. Okay, but and the CDF. So now that we're part of the CDF, how does that affect us? Will we move out of Azure ever? Do they have their own setup? Do they give us anything
I
as
think
being a part
so.
of it?
That's what I got to check. I think Google has given the CDF credits.
Okay, cool. Okay, no, I just wanted to ask because it's just, yeah, that would probably
And
be
that's
easy. Would it be easier then to have everything in Google?
it doesn't I take wherever's free. So whoever
Yeah, no,
gives
I
me the
totally agree with you.
and
Yeah,
because of the way at this level with Deploy Hub doing the deployment and we can actually go and change cloud providers just at the Deploy Hub level. Basically,
yeah, that's smart because Deploy Hub is like the one ring to rule them all.
yep. So all I have to do is go in and change instead of AKS credentials, I have to go
Yeah,
put in EKS or
AWS or
GKS.
EKS or GKS or whatever S it is. Yeah,
I go or I
awesome.
can set up another environment and I could have an EKS cluster and a GKS cluster. And at this level, I can just instead of right now it's deploy environment is here. I can just literally change it to EKS or whatever cluster I want it to deploy to. And all the everything under the covers will be handled automatically.
Yeah, this is so smart, man. Jeepers.
So it'll make it, you know, we've separated the main goal that I have that I approach thing is separating data from definition. You know, so and even like at this level,
Oh, I totally see your vision. Yeah, it's amazing, man.
so even at this level, this is still you still end up with a Cloudbuild YAML for every repo.
Yeah.
There's no like way to template this.
Mm.
You know, so that's one of the drawbacks with these, like I said, these CI tools. You have to have
So are you thinking
everything.
what's beyond the CI tool? Are you thinking like, I mean, it must be quite interesting.
Yeah,
Isn't
it's
this, yeah, beyond the
that's
CI tool?
where like that Captain project with
Yeah.
the event-driven CI. There's a Jenkins templating engine that may be useful where you can define a template and you just give some parameter files at the job level, but the job steps itself are basically templated.
Yeah, because this feels like you're locked into that provider, right? Like we have
Yeah,
to use Cloudbuild syntax now. And then if we wanted to go somewhere else, we'd have to use some other type of build syntax, right? Am I
yeah,
understanding correctly?
yeah, exactly. So if we look
Mm.
at so some of the microservice repos and some of the
Mm.
samples, you'll see like a .circle CI directory. So instead of Cloudbuild, I had to do some demos. So I had a Circle CI directory that has a very similar YAML file with the concept of steps and things like that.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
Pretty much all of them, you have to do this workaround with pushing to a SH file
I think
to pass
this stuff
information
so
around.
complex.
Yeah.
It's complex, man. Chief, just what you've done here is incredible. Yes. I mean, it's definitely beyond my I've learned a whole bunch from you now. How you do things. No, seriously, it's incredible, man.
So this is just some of the tricks I found. Every CI tool, whether it's from Circle CI or Cloudbuild or I'm trying to think like Tecton or Nebula,
Mm.
Puppet Nebula. They all have a concept of a workspace, and that's going to be persisted from one step to the next step. And that's where you just get to save stuff.
Yeah, it's really amazing, man. I think for me, what I'm looking at is like, you like the Lionel Messi of microservices. Yo.
And then one of the
Seriously.
things that we did was, I'm trying to remember how I hooked it in. Oh, there is a, let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I was using Jeepers. This is amazing how you wired this whole thing up.
Where is it? There is, somehow I hooked up our Slack, our Discord notification. And I can't
Oh,
remember
cool.
how I did that. So if you go
Yeah.
to if you go to Discord and
I hooked up my GitHub stuff, so whenever I push to Ortelius, it'll come into my own. I set up a server for myself. That's just me, and
yeah,
then it tells me, which is quite cool. It was just a nice thing to do, you know.
yeah. So there's a Cloudbuild bot.
Oh, cool. Cloudbuild bot, awesome. Oh yes,
That,
that's there, man.
and it's under build
Yes.
bot results, and that'll take you right to the console with the log.
Ah, there. Yes, of course it is there.
And I think I did that as a bot that I installed into Discord.
Yeah, yeah. It looks like it's definitely a Discord bot. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember how I did it. I'd have to pull off the cobwebs on that one.
Cheapers, yeah, I know. They all have their own little nuances there. Okay, so wow, I learned a huge amount now, and now I actually understand how Ortelius, like the whole process fits together. I've got a picture in my head now, which helps me a
And
lot.
the bot is triggered off a webhook.
Yeah, it's triggered off away. That makes sense.
Let me see what the webhook looks like. Yeah, so there's the webhook.
Now, the webhook is probably configured in Cloudbuild somewhere.
I can't remember which way, exactly where,
Like,
how I thought it was on the Cloudbuild side. Maybe in settings.
yeah, maybe in settings, like a notification type of.
Yeah.
There might be a separate. I can't remember now on Google where you do that. There is probably there is a place where you set up all this notification stuff.
Yeah.
It might be under monitoring, maybe. I remember doing stuff in monitoring where you can set up different types of notifications for Slack, email. Cheapest way was it? No, let me just type it in there.
Where was
Monitoring. Just go look at myself. Okay, so in terms of the blog, do you want me to? Would you prefer me to draw a diagram with, like, have a diagram, or have, because I'm very visual, so
I
I
think a
love doing
diagram, I think a diagram would help. And
a diagram with words. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
talking with the diagram, like
yeah,
writing. So I'm gonna put something together, and then I'll share it with you, and then you and Tracy can like say, okay, like change this, change that, or whatever, you know, or make it look like this. I mean, I know you guys are pretty good people that can make it look better, but I actually really love doing this kind of stuff. Like,
yeah, yeah,
I actually love doing this documentation type of stuff because it
yeah.
helps me understand and learn better.
Yeah, so do a diagram with some wording around it. You know, and I think that would be, you know, kind of explaining each step and why we did it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then if I'm a bit gray on some stuff, you can just help fill me in where I've need to be used. I don't know, the correct terms, you know.
Yep.
So I don't confuse people. Because like, I'm just on one thing is like the term of DevOps. Everyone's like, in South Africa is called DevOps a role, but it's not a role. It's actually a culture.
Right.
Yeah, and the way I've learned this from my Google stuff, I've learned that SRE is the role and DevOps is the culture. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yep. Perfect.
And like, everyone's calling it a DevOps role here. They're just like DevOps role, DevOps role. And yeah, anyway. It's like they're like all mad. I'm like, guys, it's not a role. It's a
Yeah.
culture. Everyone has to buy in. It's like, okay, anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't see it in monitoring.
I'm in monitoring and there's alerting and you can do uptime checks and then there's channels. Oh no.
There's metrics, but that's like monitoring our cluster.
Yeah. But there was a place in there where you could create.
Um,
I also don't always find some of the stuff. I mean, I don't know. For me personally, I found Google way more intuitive there. If you're going with their GUI, more intuitive than Azure. Azure took me a while to like.
Yeah, I struggle.
Azure was like a mind bender. I'm like, guys, seriously, what the heck, man?
Yep, I totally agree. I cannot.
I don't know if you found that. I
Yeah.
found it really not straightforward.
Oh, here it is.
Oh,
Cloud function.
okay.
That's
Oh,
right.
you just wrote a. Oh, it's a cloud function. Okay, cool.
That's right.
Sorry.
Yeah,
right.
it was.
I was totally off.
Yeah, now
Is
I
that
remember.
kind of like Lambda, but it's Google's Lambda?
Yeah. Just trying to figure out where it is.
I always just go to this menu thing and type it in there. Because I can also never find it scrolling on the left there. Shit.
Manner API.
Subscribe Cloudbuild. Here you go. Runtime Node.js.
Yeah, where did you find it?
Just go to your search bar at the top there. I just type it in there every time because I couldn't be bothered to look on the left because I always get so lost.
I know I saw it earlier.
It'll come up now. Yeah, it'll come up. There you go at the top of it.
Here we go.
Yeah. And this sounds so. Cloud Functions seems to be similar to another. What are these guys called?
Yeah, it's equivalent to Lambda over in.
It's basically Google's version. It's their Lambda. That's how I like to think of it. Okay,
exactly.
cool. And did you put this all together? Yeah, I see here. You've got your Discord. Here's your index.js.
Yep, that's all it was. A little simple.
And then you've got your there. You've got your dependencies. Okay.
Yep.
Very cool.
So
very nice.
Literally, one of the things that was weird was some of the JSON data that you got didn't give me everything I needed, and there was like no way to. It was very difficult to go and access additional API calls, so I had to do it pretty generic.
Okay.
As part of the data that was coming in. So basically, we're going to take the data coming in from the Cloudbuild. We change it from base 64 to a string, and then we can take that string.
Did you have to write
I copied it. I copied it from somebody, but I ended up. This is where we actually format the message.
Okay, my coding skills need a lot of work. I have to be honest.
So there are some things like that didn't exist, like that I wanted, like some of the environment variables, like they weren't exposed, so I had to make it generic.
Oh, there's a const. This reminds me of Cypress testing. Okay, it's basically JavaScript, right?
Yeah, it's Node.js.
JavaScript.
Yep.
Yeah, it's JavaScript. Okay, cool.
And then that's all I put out there was, so this is how I hooked in. Once everything was done, that Cloudbuild was completed, that we went and poked Discord through that webhook with the update.
Sure, Steve, this has been so amazing, man. Wow, thanks so much for your time.
No problem. So this will actually work for Slack too. So if you have a customer that wants to do a Slack poke, you could do that. And there's examples instead of Discord. How to
you could just
Slack.
insert you could just insert your Slack hook into this code, right? And then you've done it basically because it's already set up.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing, man.
All that ends up happening is you end up passing a certain format of the you know, basically a certain JSON payload over to the webhook. And this is the format for Discord, you know, content, embeds, title, description, color.
Yeah.
Slack has a couple different parameters.
Yeah.
As part of
Now,
that, so.
I know I might be. Sorry, can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
kind of. It's not kind of this. It is these guys. Where's I flipping lost Zoom now.
I know it always disappears.
Now check what these guys do. Pipedream.com.